this works. So we have a new year. We didn't learn Baal Shem Tov on the Torah and Bereshis, but I'll try in the middle to add something from him on Bereshis, a little piece. So what we're going to learn today is about something that we're all very familiar with, and it's the concept of constant pleasure is not pleasure, and that life has to have ups and downs. Okay, but we're going to learn today that maybe this is not such a Jewish concept. How should a Jew see this? Maybe this is not the way to look at things. Okay, so we'll talk about this as we go on.
Ups and downs are not good for Jews? For sure. No?
That's over show. Okay. Sounds like a very Jewish concept, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. These are the chronicles of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, faultless in his generation. Noach walked with God. It says, Et Elokim italech Noach. Now, unfortunately in English, you can't really translate that conjugation of the verb. Hitalech. Hitalech is like to say, to go to and fro. Really, that's the only way that you can translate it. He walked to and fro with God.
So the reflexive hitalech refers...
Right, it's reflexive. And by being reflexive, it says that he's moving himself. But it's not just that I'm moving myself. It's not just I'm walking. When I'm walking, I'm also moving myself. But in the Hebrew, it wants to stress the notion that it's on and off. That you move forward and then maybe you move a little bit back. It's like a dance, basically.
Getting closer to Hashem and further away.
And further away. But of Abraham, it is written, God before whom I walked. Elokim asher italachti lefanav. So he says, even though it's to and fro, but I am the one who's walking before Hashem. We said, and we've learned this in length, this whole idea of italech lefanai ve'yatamim, walk to and fro before me and be whole. That Abraham has a different way of serving Hashem. And you remember in Torah Nefesh, the way that we explain this is that it's the difference between living with sibot, living with circumstance, and living not with... That's how Noach lived, which means that he looks at the world, and he looks at the situation, and he looks at the circumstances, and from that he judges what he should do, as opposed to Abraham, who leads the world, who takes the world in the direction that he wants it to go. In other words, Noach is looking to Hashem in the world to guide him. And Abraham has the Jewish, call it, holy presence to guide where Hashem wants to go. And like Rashi says later in Parashat Noach, next week he says, that he gives a parable to explain the difference, that Noach was like a little child who has to walk hand in hand with his father. But Avram is like the elder child who's grown up already, and the father sends him ahead of him, and he says, I'll walk wherever you walk. The father says, I'll follow you, because he trusts him that he will guide him where he wants to go. I mean, Abraham knows where the world is supposed to go. But Noach doesn't know where it's supposed to go. And it's very clear from the whole thing that he doesn't know where it's supposed to go. Right? He has no idea. He just, whatever he's told, that's what he does.
He's looking for guidance from Hashem and the world. So that's two.
The world and Hashem for him are the same thing. Okay. He sees Hashem in the world. How do you see Hashem in the world, by the way? This is a topic that I wanted to talk about for a long time, and we're not going to get to talk about until much later in Bereshis. So I have to say something. So the something is how did Noach know that Hashem was talking to him? But he heard a voice. He's crazy. He's a schizophrenic. No, he had a dream, and the dream repeated many times. So what? So I also have dreams. I have dreams that repeat a lot of times also.
You have to remember.
And I remember them. How do you know that the dream has significance? it's a very big question. The dream world, certainly in all ancient traditions, is the gateway to what we call the world beyond. The world beyond consciousness. So if you're Freud, you give it a bad rap, and you say this is all about the subconscious. It's true. Chazal also agree with this, and they say most of the dreams, they're nothing. They're chalomot shav yadaber. They mean nothing. They're residue from the day. They're residue from what's left over. So what would make a dream unique? Why would you suddenly perk up when you wake up and you say, whoa?
Because sometimes it's part of prophecy, sometimes
So how would you recognize one? How would you know that this dream is different? So it's something very interesting. What?
A person that you might recognize.
So if I recognize him, I know him. So why not say that it's from a residue from my recognition of him, my knowledge of him? So I think it's very simple in most cases. Where did Noach live? He wasn't a sea dweller or a seagoer. He didn't build ships for a living. In fact, it says at the end of the parsha, Vayikach Noach ish ha'adama. Vayitan Noach ish ha'adama. He's the man of the earth. He's a farmer. It's very doubtful that he ever saw the ocean. Why would he see the ocean? Where's he living? He's living somewhere in Mesopotamia. He's building, farming, doing whatever he's doing. And he's certainly a farmer because he invented the plow. That's his life. He's a guy of the earth. He's a man of the earth, of the dirt. And suddenly he has these dreams in which God is telling him, I'm going to bring the ocean to where you are. He never even saw the ocean, probably. What does that even mean to him? But he keeps having this dream that makes no sense. So he has to go and figure this out. What does Shem want from me? This is significant. If I have a dream about something that I've never encountered, I don't even know its name. I doubt that he even had a name for it. The ocean. Yam. What's the Yam? Never saw it. And suddenly he's got a dream about this, and it repeats, and Hashem tells him to build a ship. What's a ship? He doesn't even have a word for it. It's a teiva. Teiva, it's called an oniyah. Why do you call it a teiva? Because a teiva, you saw, it's a box. And he built it like a box. He doesn't know what a ship is supposed to look like. How would he know? So he has these dreams and he sees this. And this is all going to save you. And somehow you're going to float over the waters. What are you talking about? Maybe he saw a lake in his life. Water is flooding everything.
Isn't it
What are you
also
talking about?
that in a way the dream world is more like the ocean because you don't see it's
You've seen the ocean, so you can say that.
and
But he can't say that.
and conscious everyday life is more like the land.
You said it,
Yeah,
obviously.
you've seen rivers and lakes.
Good. But you don't know what an ocean, you don't know what a sea vessel
I
is.
never imagined it like that, but it was just totally dry land, no water around these fields.
Why would he know?
I
He's in the
always
middle
imagined it by the edge
of the
water,
okay,
somehow.
but he's not.
It was
Okay.
in the middle of the-
So I we'll come back to this later about the role that dreams need to play. And again, this all goes back to the fact that the Rambam says that all the prophecies in Sefer Bereshit, all of them without exception, Moshe Rabbeinu tells us about them. But when they actually occurred, they were dreams. Hashem came to the patriarchs in dreams. He didn't come to them in broad daylight. All of them. All of them. It's always in dreams. The closest to awakening that there is when Avraham sees the three angels. And this, he says, is somewhere in between. It's like nim velo nim, tir velo tir, as the Gemara calls it. It's something in between being awake and being asleep.
Like in meditation, he's sitting the Petach HaOhel, he's sitting in a state that's like
somewhere.
not in, not out.
Okay, it's not in,
It's not in, not out.
Nishtahi,
It's somewhere in
nishtahi.
between.
So that's why the sages say that dreams are 1/60th of prophecy. But you have to understand that they're they're very not clear. But how do you know that something has significance? Because this is not something that I would dream about. I don't have language to even describe what I just saw. Or when it's the opposite, when it seems that I have a tremendous amount of language, it's like a dream where you learn something. You sit and you learn something, and then when you wake up and you think about it and you say, this is something important because it's showing me a level of understanding that I didn't have while I was learning. So that could have significance also. So it's one of the two extremes. Either it's something I'm very well acquainted with and know a great deal about, and then suddenly I have some kind of insight into it. That might have significance. Or the other type, which is the type that Noach has, is that he has no knowledge of this, no prior knowledge of this, and suddenly he's getting these dreams, which in the end he can only interpret as being a prophecy because he has no connection to the world of seafaring. He doesn't know what this is all about even.
Does this apply to us today?
What?
Does this apply to
Yes,
us
that's
today?
that's why I'm saying it. I think that it very much applies because you can't ignore everything, especially when you're working with somebody. You can't just say, "So all the dreams are nonsense." It's not true. 99.9% are just residue. But if there's something recurring and the person really is moved by it and he doesn't know what this means, so that definitely should be explored. And hopefully, when we get to this later in Bereshit, so we'll see some more about this.
When is that Tanit Hayom?
It's when you feel very distraught by a dream. Meaning you understand what it means, and it really takes you down, and you don't feel, it gives you a bad feeling. So if you can't get over the bad feeling, so Tanit is always a good thing. So, but it's not because it's a premonition or anything like that, it's just to get rid of it. Okay. But of Abraham it is written, God before whom I watch. So we said that there's this tremendous difference between Noach and Avram, between the righteous non-Jew and the first Jew, and Avram. And like Rashi says, Noah needed God's help and support, but Abraham strengthened himself and walked in his own righteousness. That's the word that we're going to dwell on. What does it mean to strengthen yourself when it comes to these ups and downs in life? Okay, so we'll get to that soon. One of the Baal Shem Tov's disciples, so on these verses, he brings in Baal Shem Tov and the Torah, the following, he relates the following thing. It says like this. One of the Baal Shem Tov's disciples once asked him, why is it that there are times when a person clings to God, he has dveikus, he feels that he's close to Hashem, and he knows in his soul that he is close to God. He knows that he feels it. I'm close. I have good thoughts. I have energy. I want to progress. I want to move forward. And I don't feel like I'm at the end of the day and last thing I want is to talk to somebody. Adaba, bring them all in. I'll talk to my children. I'll talk to so-and-so. And then he suddenly loses his dveikut and becomes distant from the Creator. For a person can tell when he is far from God as well. Can tell. Suddenly I don't have any energy. Suddenly I don't have any patience. Suddenly I'm not interested in giving. I'm suddenly weak. I have no strength for anybody. I have no strength for learning. It's boring to me. The Baal Shem Tov answered with a parable. When a father wants to teach his infant son to walk, what does he do? He stands his son between his outstretched arms so that the boy does not fall, and the child walks between his father's arms, or maybe he's even holding him, but he teaches him to walk with his arms. When he comes close to his father backs up slightly so that the child can approach him again. This way the child learns to walk well. If his father didn't keep moving back, the child would only walk that short distance from where his father first put him to where his father now stands. And that would be it. He would never learn how to keep going. So he would learn, I can get over something, but that's it. How to keep going, you have to learn how to rely on yourself to keep going. However, because the father moves back, dafka because he creates a distance between them, the child walks further. This is how God relates to his creatures. When a person is aflame with spiritual attachment, God must distance himself from him. For if not, his dveikut would be neither strong nor consistent. The clinging, the communion with Hashem would be temporal. It would come and go. It wouldn't be very strong, and in the end, it would lack. However, because God keeps moving away every time you come close and you commune with Hashem, so then Hashem's next step is to move away from you. And if you're smart, what do you understand? That Hashem moving away from me is to offer me the opportunity to get up and do things by myself. However, because God keeps moving away, the person must continually renew and strengthen his dveikut. This is what King David alluded to when he said, he will lead us. Now this word that they translate here, eternally, has many different meanings. We'll see them in a moment. Hu yanigenu almut. Almut. Ain lamed. An. And then mut sounds like death. Almut. But you read it almut. So it's very interesting, this thing, because this word almut, usually, how do you say immortal in Hebrew? Immortal. Somebody who is eternal. So the way it's said in modern Hebrew is almuti. Somebody who's immortal is called, it sounds a little bit the same, but it's almuti. But you don't write it with an ayin. It's not above death. You write it alif lamed, almuti, which means al in alif lamed in Hebrew is like ab in German, or it means the opposite of. So almuti means a mortal. Immortal. Okay, same idea. But here in the pasuk in Tehillim and Memchet, it says Hu yenagenu almut, above death. And so one of the interpretations is that this means that it's above death, is it forever, eternally. What has this got to do with that he will lead us eternally? Why would this be connected to the parable? He says that the parable of God moving back is what's hinted to in this verse, that He will lead us, He will guide us eternally. Why is that?
Hashem is always there, even if He moves back. He's there.
Okay. So but again, it's like very okay. So we'll have to come to this. As Rashi explains, like a man leads his small son slowly. So really, what he wants to say, he's not so much about the word eternally. When you look in Rashi there, Rashi has two parts to it. The first part, he says, what does it mean that God will lead us? So he says, Rashi gives the parable. He gives Mamish this parable. He says, like a man leading his son, teaching him to walk. And then the eternally seems to not be even connected. But we'll see that it's very much connected. In fact, Rashi learned the parable from the word eternally, even though he doesn't say it. We'll see in a moment. We'll see how it is in the Gemara, and how the Gemara explained it.
So what's the second part of Rashi? The first part you have here, like the man leads his small.
He says that it means something like even unto death. But that word, almut, still has to be understood. Rashi brings the Mamish the Pshat. The Pshat is almut, it means like unto death. Ad mavit. So now there's another little piece that's connected to this. It repeats a few times in the parsha, because this is the main thing that the Baal Shem Tov talked about in this parsha, was how Noach walked before Hashem to and fro. What it means to walk forward and backwards, coming closer to Hashem and feeling further from Hashem. More dveikut and less dveikut, and so on. So there's another little piece here that says something more about this word almut. And it says like this: for this reason God is called the hidden God, for a tzaddik never feels that he has reached perfection in serving God, and always feels far from Him. It's very important. He's saying the tzaddik never feels that he's close. The whole book, Noam Elimelech, is based on this statement from the Baal Shem Tov. How if you feel close, you're far away. A tzaddik can't feel that way. That's why it's called the Sefer of Tzaddikim, the book of Tzaddikim, the Noam Elimelech.
Is it really true? When you feel close, you're really
Good.
far?
The moment that you feel close, something's wrong. And we'll see why in a second. This is in order that he comes even closer, because there's infinite levels of coming close to Hashem. So it's not that you're not close. It might be that you are, but if you feel that, then at that moment you stop progressing. Okay? And that lack of progress is not shaykh to a tzaddik. And as we'll see, it's not shaykh to a Jew at all. It is the meaning of he will lead us eternally. God is called he when he is hidden. Hu Yenageinu. This is in order that he lead us eternally, almut, like a child, so that we can come closer. How do you learn that it's a child? Because the word almut
Alma
is an elem is a lad, right? The word lad in English. So that's how the Gemara explains this. He says almut means like a child. That's how Rashi learned it, even though he doesn't say that. But he puts it into the parable in the beginning. He says it's like a man leading his child. How do I know this? It's about a child eternally, because this word that I translated as eternally, it also means childlike, almut. Okay, and we'll see in a moment how the Gemara takes us even further. Okay, so this is the source in the Baal Shem Tov. So the first thing that we want and need to talk about is what do we do with this difference between a non-Jew and a Jew? So he says a non-Jew can be satisfied with just learning how to navigate the waters of life. That's what Parashat Noach is about. Parashat Noach is the universal parsha. Every non-Jew has to learn it. Okay, but if something in the Bible was written for them, it's this parsha. It's the parsha about a righteous non-Jew. And what does he experience in his life? He experiences the flood. And the sages say, what is this flood? What is the nature of this flood? It's life. It's life. Life is a flood. I mean, you come into life, and in the beginning it seems like everything is okay. Your parents are giving you chesed. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, you're cast away on a ship in the middle of the ocean. And now everything is like up and down. You just don't get seasick. And you have to navigate these waters. And that's what life is like. So sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. And the main thing to have a successful life is not so much if you're up or down, as much as that you don't throw up. Is that you can take it. And that you're able to handle the ride. Because it's a tremendous ride.
Can I just say something? Many years ago we learned that now we are in a time of chaos, and the boat is rocking, and we have to walk with the boat. Otherwise we'll drown.
Okay, so that's the big principle of the Baal Shem Tov, the Siyat HaFachim. That we go from one side to the other. Except, like, I'm going to say this even stronger in a moment, but this sounds like Noach. That's all he did. He didn't save the world. He didn't lead the world anywhere. He didn't take it anywhere. All he did was preserve life. And that's what a non-Jew has to take. That's the first lesson. It's also the non-Jew in me. You know, I also have a goy asher b'kirbecha. I also have my animal soul. It has to learn how to not. That's everything that we learned in rectifying the ego is how to navigate the waters of success and failure. Because that's how life is. There's no life that only has success. And even when there is success, over time, you lose the effect. And it's like you start going down again. And really, it doesn't matter whether you're going down from the ground floor into the ground, or whether you're going down from the 100th floor to the ground. You're going down. So down is down. Down just means that you can't hold the level of pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction from life that you have after success. You just can't. It doesn't exist. This is called that constant pleasure is not pleasure. You can't hold on to pleasure. It doesn't work.
There's some people like Russian are kind of like that. And they pump themselves up. Yeah,
They pump themselves.
That
Right? They try to pump themselves, but they pump themselves because they're down. So, But the main thing, the main success in life for any human being is that you're not broken by it. And some people have higher highs and some people have lower lows. But the bottom line is that you somehow have to balance yourself, even though it's a really difficult ride. And that's what it means to live a successful life in the end. It's a composure that a person gains, usually over time. And a lot of what psychology does is it tries to help people regain their composure and understand that psychology is not going to take away a person's illness if he has an illness, but it'll help him cope with it, knowing that, first of all, there's a very good chance that he could come out of it. Hopefully, like we always say, that's the first thing that anybody who does therapy has to have, firm faith that you're going to come out of this, that everything's going to change. And how do I know it's going to change? First of all, because I know that things change. They go up and they go down. They go up and they go down. So after this down, there's going to be an up.
I'm bothered by something, and that is that it sounds like you're saying, there's surviving and there's thriving, and you're saying thriving is taboo because it brings us to a point where we become imbalanced. It's too much. But why can't a person have thriving and have balance at the same time? You're saying.
I didn't say that.
Well, you're saying it's just that
You can't get satisfaction forever.
Okay, so what is the definition of thriving in this context?
Thriving, we'll see in a moment, is something else. But the satisfaction cannot be continuous. Pleasure cannot be continuous. By definition. The definition simply means that the moment that you gain the pleasure from something, the next moment you need something new in order to continue to receive pleasure. So the one thing can't give you constant pleasure. Well, obviously, there's an easy loophole. What if I keep getting new things? If I keep getting new things, or, as we'll see, that I'm not dependent on external things giving me the pleasure, then they actually go together, as we'll see. So then there might be something called constant pleasure. But in general, in the world that we live in, there's no such thing. One thing cannot give me pleasure forever. So I always need something new. But I can't always get something new, because the moment that the old thing stops giving me pleasure, which is instantaneous almost, so I begin to drop. Even people that won the lottery win millions of dollars. So for a while they're on a high, but even if they don't lose everything, even if they lead a normal life afterwards, it becomes normal. They don't live with the high that they had before. It's an incredible thing that it's like, it doesn't matter how big it is, how great the pleasure is, it subsides over time. And usually it's also followed by a period of dissatisfaction, of morose feeling that I'm looking for something and I don't know what it is. Because the drop is a drop. It doesn't matter from how high you came. It's always like going down. So there's this thing that constant pleasure is not pleasure, and therefore you have to be able to navigate life by remaining composed under the ups and downs. But is this the parable that the Baal Shem Tov is using? Is he saying that Noah, it's like Noach, I'm going up and down? No, he says he wants to explain what? He wants to explain Noach or Avram. Which one does he want to explain? What's the parable for? Is the parable to explain what means that Noach went to and fro? Or is the parable to explain what it means that Avram went to and fro before Hashem? So it starts out, it sounds like Noach, because the father is standing here. He says, come to me. Right? So, and he says, in the beginning, he's like got his arms outstretched. And the child is between his arms. He's like held. He's almost holding him. Maybe he's even holding him. But then he says, as he took his first step, now the father goes back, and now he's not with arms encircling his son anymore. But rather the son has to learn from what just happened that even though my father is not holding me, I have to take the next step. Even though he's not encircling me. He's not around me. He's not circumspecting me. Right? He's not circumstances. But he's there further away. There's two things that are going on here. One of them is that I have to feel that I can do things, I can move. More importantly, in Avram's case, I can feel that I'm doing it without Hashem's support. Meaning I'm doing it. It's like he's further away. I have to come to him. He's not leading me.
But are we talking about nisyonot or about kirvat Hashem?
Doesn't matter. We'll see that doesn't matter. Okay, so to get into the real depth of this is to know where did the Baal Shem Tov. So it's not this concept of tanuk tmidi and not tanuk, that constant pleasure is not pleasure, is not exactly from the Baal Shem Tov. It's mentioned in earlier philosophical writings in Yiddishkeit, but it doesn't appear per se in the Talmud, and it doesn't appear anywhere earlier than Rav Saadia Gaon. I think he's the first one who mentions this concept. Where did it come from? No. So we'll see soon how the Gemara does say this. It says it a little bit differently.
What's the word for last?
Tmidi.
Tzmidi.
To deal, like to deal. Where did this thing come from? So if you do some research, so you find out that this is from our friends in Babylon, from the Zoroastrian religion. And the moment you think about it, it had to come from there. Because it's such a dualistic concept that there has to be up and has to be down. What did they try to say? They tried to teach people.
We have it too.
Okay, but it's not what's always shows. We'll see in a moment. We'll see in a moment why this is different. For them, it was exactly this concept that to navigate life, you have to accept the fact that you go up and down, go up and down, go up and down, and life is like a circle. You're like on a merry-go-round. Sometimes you're here, and sometimes you're there. And you can't stop it. That's how it works. What is this? This is exactly the dualistic concept that the Zoroastrians had of good and evil, and they're equal, and all you have to do in life is somehow navigate between them. That's all. There's a good God, there's an evil God. There are times that things work out, times that things are in chaos, and you have to find your way in between. How did I come to this? Because Voltaire writes about it, and he has a book called, strangely, I don't know how he wanted it to be read. I don't know, how would you read it in French? I'm not sure. Zadiq. How would you read that?
Looks like Zadik.
So right away you got it. It took me a long time to figure out what he wanted. It's Tzaddik.
Is the name of the book?
It's the name of the book. And it's like Candide. It's like a story about and it's full of wisdom that he took from a book that he didn't know what the book's name was, and he misnamed the book for the author. Meaning he called it the book's name is Sadr, which looks like in English sadder. It's more sad, but Sadr is the name, and this was the early Latin work that brought down the Zoroastrian teachings. And he thought that Sadr was the name of the author. So everywhere in his book Tzaddik, he writes, Sadr says. And there you see at the very end, he has this, Sadr says, the constant pleasure is not pleasure. So and when you look into this, then you find that really this came from Zoroastrian religion. So it's very fitting, because that's exactly Noach's message to the world. The fact that this came from a non-Jewish form of thought.
They said there were two gods.
Again, it's a type of Avodah Zarah, but this concept that you have to move between this dualistic, and you have to be Noach. That's why his name is Noach. You have to be composed. Noach really means composed. Okay? Noach labriot. He's pleasant to people. He's not moved easily. He has a vision of that the world's going to be wiped out by a flood. No, we have time. 120 years. No panic. No, nothing happening here. There's plenty of time. Everything is very easy going. No problems. And it could be that that's the secret of his success. That because of that he was an inventor and he was able to do things because it was said, there's ups and downs. No need to get perturbed. Everything's going to be fine. Why is this a non-Jewish concept? Because in the end, it's like a merry-go-round. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. But you're not walking anywhere. You're not going anywhere. The mashal, the parable of the Baal Shem Tov is that I'm walking somewhere, I'm going somewhere, there's a goal. And not only is there a goal, but Hashem tells me, you have to figure out what the goal is. You have to figure out what your mission in life is.
Sorry, in this Moshe, the father's really defining the direction.
Ah, in the beginning, for a young child. But once he's grown up like Avram, he says, you walk before me. Now he knows how to walk. And he says more than Elokim asher italachti lefanav, says Avram. The God that I walked before. It's no longer him telling me. He says, only in the beginning do I have to get up your confidence enough so that you can walk by yourself. And how do I do this? By concealing myself. But the goal is that you define the direction. When you finally learn, so the punchline is that a tzaddik is constantly not relying on Hashem. That's why he says a tzaddik always feels that he's distant from Hashem. Where's Hashem hiding? It's up to me to decide. A tzaddik is always saying, Hashem is hidden from me. Even if Hashem is revealed at this moment, I feel I'm completely one with Him. Yet he churns the world into ayin. He churns the world into a nothingness.
But what about that we have the Torah that defines our path?
It doesn't define the path, it defines the how. It doesn't define the goal. Okay?
Sure it does.
What's the goal?
Making a place for Hashem and
That's already Chazal telling us. In the Torah itself, it's not so simple. If you ask in the Torah, if I just have Shulchan Aruch, and I just learn halacha, so it teaches me how to walk. It doesn't tell me where to go, that's why it's called halacha. But it doesn't tell me where I'm supposed to go. So Chazal give me a variety of answers. It's to make the world into a dwelling place for Hashem is the highest one. And yet, how does that translate into my life? That I don't know the book where it says how to translate that.
doing all the mitzvahs. We know what to do.
But that's the means. What's the end? The end is to make the world a dwelling place for Hashem. What's my part in that? Ten chelkeinu b'toratecha. My part in the Torah. What's my part? I don't know the book where it says Moshe's part in the Torah. I have to write that. That's the whole thing that we learned in confidence and faith. Faith and confidence.
Big deal without the I. I mean, we go forward and whatever we
Because
do.
otherwise Hashem doesn't need me. He wants me to contribute.
Our part, I'm missing something that you're saying, I guess.
If we just aspiring Bainam and this is the work of a tzaddik, how can we apply this teaching? I mean, like,
Because every Jew is a tzaddik.
how can we step into that? That seems
Because
like
every Jew has a goal, and you're not going to be fulfilled in life
even as a- just a
if you
simple
just
Bainam,
navigate like the non-Jew.
But it talks about this as a work of a tzaddik. I mean,
Every Jew is a
seriously,
tzaddik.
well, I don't feel that. I mean, I'm about to be a Bainami from Margaret. So how do we apply this? How do we step into this terrifying? And how do you know that it's what Hashem wants?
To strive for more.
Hmm?
When you strive for more, and you say, I want more, b'chol modecha, that's the work of the tzaddik.
This requesting it, and then from that becomes give you the direction. And whatever you're doing in your life, just
Good.
say you're a writer, whatever it is.
Good.
You know, we sit around waiting for the signs that Hashem to open up the inspiration, the right time. That's a Noach consciousness.
Right.
But an Abraham consciousness is sitting and saying, I want to do more, I want to publish this book, sitting down.
And I have a goal, and I see my vision. I see what I want. There's no book where that vision appears. It's something that has to come out of me. That's why I mentioned this thing about dreams, that it could be that I could learn it from my dreams. Not my sleep dreams. My dreams.
No inspiration.
And you have to have that. What's my mission in fulfilling this supreme goal that's called making a dwelling place for Hashem below? What does it mean? How do I understand a dwelling place for Hashem below? Even a simple thing like let's say there's somebody in my family that needs help, a lot of hand holding, a lot of this, a lot of that. So if I have no aspirations, if I have no, so I'll only answer when they call me. But if I have a feeling that it's my duty or it's my ability to help guide, to help create something better. So also with a lot of good sense, I have to decide if I want to get involved in things that they didn't ask me about, but that I could maybe set up in some way. With children, you see this a lot. Eventually, children become old enough that they know how to walk by themselves, and yet, you see that maybe they've even told you about a dream, but they don't know how to make it happen. So maybe you get involved in it more. It could also be, but first of all, what are my dreams? What are my aspirations? Like I said, the worst thing about the state of Israel is that it's made us all sterile. That everything's taken care of already. It's not. It's absolutely not. Nobody's dreaming here. Nobody has any dreams. There was a dream 100 years ago. Settle the land, do this and do that. It's over. You did that. So now what? Right? It's our dream. The people that came didn't come because Hashem told them to.
I know, but
They came because it was their dream.
It's
Said it, but they didn't do it because of that. They mamish came because it was their dream.
To settle the land? No, they thought redemption comes from starting that, doing that.
None of them were from. They could care less. It was the opposite.
For them, redeeming the land was part of
Have said it. Okay, so that's a new definition of what redemption is. Okay, it's your definition became yours, and it has to be like that. It has to, but you don't have to feel that you're against Hashem. You don't have to be not frum to do this. What's the problem? The problem is that they didn't know the secret, the simple secret of even if I'm close, I'm not close. Even if I feel like I'm doing what Hashem told me to do, I'm not yet doing it. I'm not. This didn't bring me closer to Hashem. Hashem is still further away. That secret of seeing that as close as I am, I'm still far away, infinitely far away. First of all, it's not for the faint-hearted, right? Because if you want to live on the feeling that I've arrived, which by the way doesn't work, because even if you've arrived, you'll be far away again, because there's ups and downs and ups and downs. You can never have constant pleasure. You can never be constantly close. So in any way you're going to turn. But it was saying that what the tzaddik does.
Not Hashem's perspective, from our perspective, we think, but not from Hashem. He's
I know.
always first.
It doesn't matter.
I mean, that's important to understand.
Okay, but the tzaddik, how do you measure a tzaddik? How much is he not afraid to be far away?
What about the Torah?
How much is he willing to admit that he's far away from being close to Hashem?
He realized how little he knew at the end.
Said it. At the end, there's this thing that even the greatest person has no say anymore. They gave me that, but said it. He always feels that Hashem is still far away. I still have a long way to go. But so that's the first thing that the tzaddik. How does it about a tzaddik? Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. That a tzaddik falls 7 times and he gets up. The tzaddik is not because he falls down. It's because he's not afraid to fall down, because he's willing to get up afterwards. To fall down doesn't mean that you have to have failure. Here what he's saying is, the tzaddik, even if he has success for him, that's being far away from Hashem. I'm never close to Hashem. The more you're a tzaddik, the more you want more all the time.
So that's shiflut. You just got to be in constant state of shiflut. That's what it sounds to me.
Okay. Could be. Or in Moshe Rabbeinu's sense, that it's, I have not fulfilled my mission yet at all. I need more bittul. More bittul means that I need to do more. I need to do more in the world. Back down into the world. Okay.
The definition of tzaddik v'tov lo and tzaddik v'ra lo, how does that fit into this context?
Probably the consummate tzaddik is somebody for whom even his yetzer hara is non-existent already. Meaning there's no feeling of of it being negative that I'm far away. On the contrary, he feels that itself, that's churning the Yetzer Hara, that's churning the Nefesh Be'emit, which is what feels the down, that's churning it into holiness. That if I can feel holiness and being far away because it pushes me to want more, so it's no longer a negative thing. It's been transformed completely, like he says about David Melech. So now let's see this in the. I didn't have time to translate it, so I'll read it in
So
Hebrew.
if you feel that, in your lifetime you didn't bring the Beit HaMikdash or the Mashiach isn't here yet,
There's plenty of time still. Plenty of time. I have next breath. That's enough time to bring it. Doesn't take more than that. Again, if you look at like historical, what do you call them, processes and this, from the point of view of history, so Mashiach's a long process. But from the point of view of mitzvos, which are not a historical point of view, mitzvos are not about history. A person can't say they're atemporal in a certain sense, all the mitzvos. Because you can't say, well, last year I already benched lulav, so this year I don't need to. Well, who cares what you did last year? It's not relevant. Mitzvah is always here and now. So in the here and now, which is always, like you say, it's new, this is a new moment, there's no process involved. It's just that this thing that I do now can be infinite. That's all. In a certain sense, the mitzvahs transcend the whole time process. It's true that we have mitzvahs that are time dependent, but even when you do them, even though they're time dependent, you can only bench lulav and make it a mitzvah on Sukkos. But you don't say, last year I already did, and next year I intend to anyway also. So this year I can take off. It doesn't work that way. It's atemporal in the sense that it doesn't really consider time. So historical processes, the Mashiach's going to take so much longer. But when the Rebbe looks at it and he says, the mitzvah that you're doing now, because the mitzvah you're doing now is everything. It's not a historical, it's not an additional historical fact. It is. It also works on the historical basis. But really, when you're doing it, you're doing something that's beyond time. You're touching the infinite. In any case, this verse that we said, Hu yanagenu almut. So, Chazal in the Yerushalmi, Masechet Sukkah, and in Koheles Rabbah, it's very much connected to Koheles, by the way, because Koheles is like almost throughout the Noach view of the world. It's like the best you can do is not to fall, is not to lose your composure. Okay? That's the best you can do. At the very, very end, he says, but there's something more. את האלוקים ירא ואת מצוותיו שמור כי זה כל האדם. בסדר. But they bring this medrash there, and they say like this.
This is Yerushalmi.
It's in Yerushalmi and Sukkah, I think it's towards the end, and in the Koheles it's at the beginning.
Medrash.
It's a medrash, Midrash Kohelet Rabbah. So he says like this. I'll read it in Hebrew and then it's all on this chapter 48 in Tehillim. And how does the chapter begin?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Why does it say, why is there a Yud Hey after Alam, Alamiya? Why isn't it just Alam?
I don't know what this word even is, what it's
Well,
doing
the very
here.
last word on the sheet that you gave.
I don't know what this is. I don't know why it's there. I didn't do it. I didn't write this.
You don't know why there's a Yud and a Hey?
I should have taken it off. I saw that it had a footnote. And it said in Aramaic and Hebrew as well, the word Elam means a youth.
But that doesn't add why it's a Yud and a
I have
Hey.
no idea why you added it. It's not.
It was not known.
It's not a word in Hebrew as far as I know. The word is Elam and Alma. It might be that he added the Yud in by mistake. He meant like Alma. I don't know. Whoever wrote this, you have to ask him. Okay. So now let's hear this. Rabbi Bibi v'Rabbi Elazar b'Shem Rabbi Chanina Omer. So there's two Rabbeim. In the Yerushalmi, it's two other people. It doesn't matter so much. He says like this: Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something we know very well. Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasot rosh mechula latzadikim la'atid lavo. It's quoted a little bit differently, but it says Hashem is going to make a head of mechula. Mechula is a dance. So it's a circle of dance for the tzaddikim in the future. But where does he learn this from? So we usually learn it from the verse Ki ze Elokim Elokeinu Olam V'ed. Right? That's the verse that we learn. It's also in chapter 48. But how do you learn that it's going to be in a circle? In the Gemara that everybody knows, it says Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasot machol latzadikim shene'emar Hine Elokeinu ze Hashem kivenu lo nagilah v'nismecha b'shuata. It brings a little bit of a different pasuk from a different place, but it means the same thing. And they pointed, but it doesn't say, as far as I remember, where you learn that it's going to be a circle dance. So where do you learn this from? So the beginning in chapter 48 in Tehillim, there's a verse that says, Shitu libchem lecheila, meaning pay attention to its sickness. It's talking about Yerushalayim. It's one of the Mizmor Libnei Korach. And it says, pay attention, put your heart to its sickness. But the word sickness, lecheila, says the Medrash, don't read it lecheila, lecholaktiv. Lechola also sounds like sick, but lechola is already like a machol. Lachul is to dance around in a circle.
What pasuk is it?
I think it's
48?
bet.
One?
Second,
41?
first, second.
48.
No, it's got to be the second at least.
But no, but it's
V'lo Hashem be'aru v'lo
Shem,
keinu.
yeah.
It's today's.
So which part? Where's the pasuk? Where's the pasuk? Say it again.
If you give it to me,
What is the word for circle in this case? Chila doesn't
Chula. Chula is to
Chula is
dance in the circle. Really, it's to dance.
Chula
But
is dance?
like a machol is like in a dance.
Okay.
How do you know it's not danced in a line or to dance in some other way? How do you know that Chula is dancing in a circle?
Okay, good question. But that's how it's understood. Chula. Yeah, sorry, it's the second to last verse. So I'll just read the verses. Shitu libchem lecheila. So pay attention. Another interpretation would be to its armies, to its strength. Pasgur menotea, climb its castles. Leman tesapu ledor achron, so that you can tell the last generation or the next generation, depends on you understand this word. Ki ze Elokim Elokeinu. Then he says, this is God, our God, forever. Hu yenagenu almut. He will guide us, like we said before, eternally. Because it's the last two verses. Sorry, it's not the beginning.
Last two verses.
Yudalad
What was
and
the word
Tedvav.
for the dance?
Chila. Shitu libchem lecheila.
Ah.
And it says, don't read it chila, read it chula. Okay? And what's the idea here? Shehen chalin lefanav ke'alamot. That they dance before him like maidens. Almot, like a lad, is the male elem. So almut, which it reads alamot, is like a maiden. Umarin alav be'etzma, and they point at him with their finger. Ve'omrim ki ze Elokim Elokeinu olam ve'ed. That this is God, our God, forever. Hu yenagenu almut alamot. Again, he will guide us like an alma, like a maiden. And he says it specifically two things. Bizrizut, quickly. It's all very quick, because the dance has to be quick. Alamut kilin ulmata, like, read it like maidens that dance. Hachi man de'amar, and this is what it says, alamot tofeifot, that maidens dance. How do they dance? Tofeifot is like that they dance with their heels. So they're constantly, their heels are constantly striking the earth very quickly. So it's sort of like Lord of the Dance, if you think about it. Okay, good. It's that type. So that
Tofefot with a,
tofefot, with a tof, like a tof, like beating,
like, was it tambourine?
like a tambourine.
It's not the same word as totafot.
No, it's with a taf, tofefot. Okay, so that's what he says. Now, how did the Baal Shem Tov use this? First of all, from the Baal Shem Tov and on, there's dancing in a circle. This thing looks so Jewish. As far as I know, it wasn't dancing, it was going around with the Torah in a circle. And it's true that in the Beis Hamikdash they also, but they didn't dance. They walked around in a circle. The whole thing of dancing in a circle, as far as I know, that started with the Baal Shem Tov. That became the Jewish form of dance from the Baal Shem Tov and on.
I can't believe it.
Without any question, the Goyim were doing this before. Why weren't Jews doing this? I don't know. I saw some historical stuff. Maybe. And Ken the Baal Shem Tov says, no, you know what this is? This is exactly what this Medrash is talking about. And in the future, Hashem is going to make a circle dance for the tzaddikim. But now, what's the main thing? The main thing is...
The maidens dance on top of under the trees.
What? Can, but it's not in a circle. Okay. So now he says it's in a circle, and this is what it's talking about. And the main thing that he added to it is that in the same way as when you're dancing, you come closer and you move back, and that's why, I don't know, I don't know enough about dance to know how this is. By the non-Jews, how do they dance? With the Hora, which is, I don't know where this came from, but the whole idea of doing 2 steps forward and 1 step back is seems like exactly that idea, that you go forward and then you move back, you go forward, or like that they come into the center and they come out. But there's no progress. So there has to be progress as you're dancing. So, but on the face of it, this is just like a merry-go-round. You're still in the same place. So what did the Baal Shem Tov add to this? And he added to this, he said, one small variation, which makes all the difference in the world. He said that this dancing, he says, is like a circular staircase. He uses the word spiral, if I'm not mistaken. He uses some word for it. He says, every time that you spin around, that you finish the circle, you're at a higher place. And you keep going higher and higher. So he says, it's true that I'm also like a non-Jew, I'm like Noach, that I have my ups and downs. But the whole purpose of each revolution, where, again, like a Ferris wheel, is that after I've come down, I'm not in the same place that I was when I started. Every time that I go through this whole cycle in my life of up and down, it's not enough to remain composed. It's not enough just to say, okay, this is how life is. It has its ups, it has its downs. You have to be like Abraham, who says, this is going somewhere. It's true that I also have my ups and downs. I'm like everybody else. But my life is going somewhere. Where is it going? It's going towards a goal. That's why I can lead the Shem. That's why I have a mission. The moment that a non-Jew feels that he has a mission, a divine mission, in that sense, he's already uncovered the Avraham inside of him. He's ready to convert already. He's ready to understand. Okay, if you understand that Hashem put you here for a reason, and you want to find what the reason is, okay, so now go all the way. But that's what Avram saw. He saw that I have a purpose. The moment that you understand that you have purpose, how do you understand that you have purpose? I said in the beginning, we say something from the Baal Shem Tov on the Torah, on Bereshis. On Bereshis, he says something incredible. He says, and it's something that's not well known about the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov many times said, in Bereshis it says something very simple. He says that the world also has periods of greatness and periods of minor-mindedness, small-mindedness. It says, in the previous generations, the world was in a minor place, was in a small-mindedness place. There was very little ability to do anything great. But now that I'm here, he says, it's in a great place. How do people read this? The Baal Shem Tov made it into a great place. That's not what he meant. He said, first of all, he says, what's the difference in the world before the Baal Shem Tov and the world after the Baal Shem Tov? So the Baal Shem Tov, in many places, he said this so clearly. He said, before I came to the world was still under the atmosphere that the Greeks had created, that the world is eternal, that the universe is eternal. And now the air is cleared. I said this many times. And the air is now clear, and people understand that the world is created. It's not eternal. So that was a big difference. How do I know this is true? Read the Rambam. The Rambam, in the end, he says, I believe like what Moshe Rabbeinu says, that the world was created. But my mind doesn't tell me that. In fact, my mind prefers 100% more Aristotle and Plato's opinion about the eternity of the world. If it's in any way emanated, like Plato, so still it's just emanated, it's not created. It's not yesh from nothing. It wasn't created by God. It's just a reflection of God. It is God. For Plato, Plato is almost like Spinoza. The world and God are almost the same thing. He said, so even the greatest Jewish philosophers were under that atmosphere. He says that. You read him, and what do you see? That he still feels that the world is eternal. That's how the feeling is. So he says, the Torah tells me it's not this way, so I believe the Torah.
So from where do we know about the 6,000 years?
From the Torah. Right, the Rambam knew Torah. He says, I know that the Torah tells me that it's created, but my mind doesn't tell me that. My existence doesn't tell me that. So it says about Shem, Baruch Hashem, I came into the world in a generation where the air is cleared from this type of avodah zarah that the Greeks put into the world, which is that the world is eternal. So therefore, what happens? The moment you understand that the world is dependent on Hashem, everything is dependent on Hashem, so it can't be that it's just ups and downs and it just goes on forever. If it was created by Hashem, it has a purpose. It was created by God, it has a purpose. It's supposed to go somewhere.
It's limited to 6,000.
It's not limited, not limited, whether it has an end, doesn't have an end, that's not important. What is important is that it's created, it has a purpose, and your confidence, your trust is not in it remaining how it was always. It's not that everything will just remain the same, you just go up and down and up and down and up and down, it just goes on forever. But your feeling is that because it's created, my trust is in the Creator, not in the world. And the moment that your trust is in the Creator, so it must be that these ups and downs are going somewhere. That's what Avram understood. Avram was the first person after Adam Rishon to completely understand from himself that the world is not eternal. It's not the sun and the moon and the sun and the moon coming up and down and up and down and down. It's not nature. Rather, it's Shem. He created it. He understood there must be something that creates it. The moment that you understand there's something that creates it, you also have purpose. You also have a direction. And it's not just the ups and downs. So the Baal Shem Tov, when he says this, it's not just going around in a circle. It's a circle that's spiraling up.
To what?
To the goal that Hashem wants it to be a dwelling place for Hashem. Yes.
Should we, in our lives, or let's say with clients, should we look at the downs for the positive, smile, and like, wow.
So it says,
this is
if
great,
you're a tzaddik, that's how he sees it.
and look at the ups like, uh-oh.
No. The ups are
Ups
or
enjoy them
success.
also. Enjoy the ups. And
No,
when
at
downs
the ups he says, I'm not up.
Aha.
That's why his up is already down.
So when it's down,
When you
should
think about
smile
it-
and say, wow, this is great.
When you do it like when you do it in a spiral, so let's say not up and down, let's say left and right.
Sure.
So right is like the up and left is like the down. But if it's in a spiral, every time I come to the new right, but it's lower than the next one, because the next time I'll be higher. So what does he see, the tzaddik? He's not afraid to say, as much as there's success here, this is still a floor under the next one.
Potentially.
And he's not afraid of it.
Got it.
A tzaddik is a person who's not afraid of it. Whose Yetzer Hara doesn't tell him, it's the end of the world. No.
I've arrived.
Or, I've arrived and it's the end of the world. It's never the end of the
Never
world.
arrived.
You're always going higher. Okay.
But there should be a general simcha that's
Nachon.
overriding all of it.
And that's why the whole thing is called a dance.
Uh-huh.
Nobody dances when they're sad.
And maybe that's
Doesn't
the
work.
difference between the Tov Lo and Barado.
Nachon, this is it. For the non-tzaddik, the way you asked it, so for the not tzaddik gamur, who has tov v'ralo, So he has good. He sees the ascent, but every time that he's back on the left, he says, "No, Pseder, I feel that this is a is a lower place."
Can I ask what the spiral means? What going higher means if we're still like infinitely far from Hashem?
Pseder, but you're progressing.
But we're
If-
still just as far from Hashem.
Okay, but the
We're
question is
always
whether
just as
there's
far.
progress or not.
But progress is seen differently. I always thought progress meant getting closer to Hashem.
Okay, so he says that's in 2 dimensions. But when you add the 3rd dimension, progress is like going higher. Or if you're a Lubavitcher, it means going lower. It's the same thing, same idea. You're bringing Hashem further and further down.
Why do you say that?
Because the Alter Rebbe always explains the Ratzov Shov is the Ratzov is into the world and the Shov is to return to Hashem. The opposite from what everybody says. Both are true. But it's just a question of perspective.
It's like the mikvah, the Chabad mikvah, there's this up, down, this right, left thing. You know about that?
Okay.
Sort of like.
So the source of all these is in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. Because Ma'arat HaMachpelah, there's a difference in opinion. Was it the Ma'ara, a cave inside a cave, or is a cave above a cave? So, it's the source of all these things. Is Gan Eden moving further in, or moving further down? Okay, so hopefully everything came into place, and we've talked about all these things. I think it comes together beautifully here, and that's it. And we all have a Noach inside. That's why we read Parashat Noach. We don't say, "Oh, only the non-Jews need to read Noach." We also read Noach, because I also have a Noach inside me. But the Noach has to know that he has to come. There has to be an Avram after him. So you get 1 week after Sukkos, 1 week to rest. And to say the main thing about this year is going to be to hold my composure. But in the end, even here, you have to be ready for next week, for Lech Lecha, and to know that I'm supposed to advance. I'm not here just to repeat the motions. The ups and downs are not just constant forever, and they don't lead anywhere. They're all in order to create the energy of moving forward.